Right, we will go ahead and get started. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to our first AOT Learning Network webinar of the year. My name is Brooke Gentry, and I am the AOT Implementation Coordinator as part of Treatment Advocacy Center's implementation team, and I'm joined by my colleagues Betsy Johnson and Amy Lukes. Thank you all so much for joining. Before I introduce this month's webinar, I wanted to share a couple things. First, if this is your first time joining an AOT Learning Network webinar, welcome. We hold these webinars every third Thursday of the month, and we also host AOT stakeholder-specific web chats every fourth Thursday of the month. So for those of you who were forwarded the information about this webinar and did not register from an AOT Learning Network email directly in your inbox, we would strongly encourage you to join the network for more events like this one. I will drop the link to join the network in the chat shortly. So everybody, I'm really honored to introduce today's presenter, Melissa Maxey. Melissa holds a Master of Science in Social Administration and is also a licensed independent social worker with a supervision designation. She served as the team leader for an AOT/ACT team in Cleveland, Ohio for 4 years. And she's been in the mental health and addiction field for 25 years and currently works as a trainer and consultant for the Center for Evidence-Based Practice at Case Western Reserve University. And in that role, she provides consultation and training to ACT teams locally and nationally to ensure ACT team clients receive quality services from their providers. Today, Maxey will be presenting on stages of change in AOT. And please feel welcome to submit written questions via the chat or Q&A functions throughout the webinar. We will not be taking questions with the raised hand feature. So be sure to put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and then questions will be addressed after Melissa's presentation. So with that said, I will hand it over to you, Melissa.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this webinar. I'm so excited to be teaching you this material. Let me get my slide deck up. So today we're going to be talking about stages of change and stage-wise treatment. And what I wanted to talk about today is, I know we have a mixed audience. It could be people that are actually clinical folks. It could be people that are involved with the court, and even consumers or family members or supports loved ones of people that are dealing with mental health issues and possibly addiction issues as well alongside that. And so I'm really excited to bring you this material. I'm a firm believer in knowledge is power. And as a provider in the field, working with people who have severe and persistent mental illness, sometimes an addiction to go along with that, sometimes also physical things that are going on with them, and social issues that they're dealing with. I feel like we can never have too many tools in our toolkit to be able to look and understand people, and then be able to communicate with one another about what someone might be going through and their readiness to actually make the changes that might be necessary to move forward and define their life in recovery, whatever that looks like for them. So today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I'm actually really passionate about. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody on this call is going to think, oh, this will work, or those types of things. You know, none of our interventions are going to work 100%, but I do think this is a really effective way to begin to talk about people's change or readiness for change. And the model I'm going to talk about today really provides an effective structure, an efficient structure for us to plan interventions and decisions when we're helping people change behavior. And I think from my own experience when I was running my ACT and AOT team, there were certain people that really they benefited from AOT from the beginning to the end. They appreciated the structure. They appreciated that someone was there for them. They had a team helping them with things, and they were reporting to the court. And so they really benefited. They loved that structure just in and of itself without any other interventions except, maybe the intensity of an ACT team. But there were other people that didn't blossom under that structure. And when I think about some of the strategies we used, it went back to their readiness to even engage with providers or a process like AOT. And so that's why I think this is powerful to talk about, because people's readiness to change does affect their ability to really make use of the structure of AOT and the supports within it. And so I'm hoping this helps people, and I'm hoping you have questions for me in the chat. When I present, I just want to be fully transparent. I also encourage people, if they have challenging questions or feel like this isn't something that fits in with the scheme of what they are thinking that they could do, whether it's through the courts or family members, any of that, any clinicians, please bring that up, and I'm happy to explain and answer any questions you might have. So let's start out today talking about stages of change. And simply, it's a way of beginning to think about any particular change a client's going to need to make or wants to make. And what we see, if you love someone who has mental health issues and addiction issues, or you're treating someone, or you have them in front of your bench as a judge or magistrate, or you're the court monitor, that some people that are participating in programming and that we care about, sometimes their motivation may not be towards the things like taking their medication, making sure they get to their visits, taking care of their physical health, complying with whatever we have that's part of why they came to treatment. And that even when people are very engaged in treatment, sometimes motivation will change. And so this is a way to begin to address that with we're going to talk about not only the stages of change today, but also some things to do and some things to avoid for each of these stages of change when folks are working on their own change process. And remember, anytime we're talking about change, if you think about your own major personal changes you may have gone through, just like the clients we work with, it takes some learning, it takes some practice, and sometimes life throws us a lot. And so we could be in the middle of a very productive, moving forward, making change, and then something could happen to derail that. And so part of us really understanding the stages of change will help us give those interventions to help someone get back on track more quickly. And in general, when you're practicing new skills and you're trying to do something differently, there are times when old behaviors come back, and it's normal. One of the things that can be helpful, and when I talk about this today, we'll talk about things to avoid and then how we encourage people when they go back to old behaviors. I do have, and I'll talk about it a number of times, I do have some, for people who are interested, I do have some more in-depth staging and stage of change tools that we use. We're not going to get a chance to talk about it in this one. It's just kind of giving you an overview, but I will at the end talk to you about our website and the things that you can get off the website to look at, and if you're interested. So the stages of change we're going to talk about in the stage of change model was developed by Prochaska and Di Clemente. And what they began to do was really look at, there are specific behavioral things that hallmark people's readiness to change. And so they separated them into categories and described what those stages would look like, what behaviors we'd see from someone. And then also over time, as clinicians embrace this, they began to develop what would be appropriate interventions or things that would be more helpful when a person's in a particular stage to help them move through that stage, learn about themselves, and decide for themselves what their change process should be. People change in general when they feel supported, when they feel understood, and when they feel like they can tell you anything, even the stuff that maybe they wouldn't normally tell because they might feel like they would get in trouble. So even with clients who are mandated to treatment, we want to encourage that engagement in the program and engagement with the team and the providers to really have that benefit for them. And so today we're going to talk about pre-contemplation, and I'm going to describe it, and we're going to talk about some things that are good to avoid. And then later in the training, I'm also going to talk about some treatment, some interventions that are helpful. And we're also going to talk about contemplation stage, and I'm going to define that for you. And then preparation stage is after that, and action stage. And then we have maintenance stage. And on this actual graph here, we put relapse or reoccurrence. It could actually happen anywhere in this process, but it's here sort of at the end of the circle. And then down here at the bottom, I did want to point out, this is called termination. Normally what I refer to this as is probably transition. People being either ready to be off civil commitment, ready to maybe transition to a lower level care. And we'll talk a little bit about how we'll know that that's time. And some of you may even share your own instance in the chat where you knew people were ready and had been doing what they wanted to do. All right. So let's talk about pre-contemplation stage in the trans theoretical model of staging from Prochaska and DiClemente. So pre-contemplation is the ignorance is bliss stage. So these are the folks, and I know that there's people on this call that have experienced this either personally with their loved one or professionally in clinical or the court setting, where the person has no idea that they even have a problem. And for our purposes here, I do want to talk about what it looks like, but also the person may not understand that they have a problem because their mental health symptoms are in a place where it just doesn't allow for that. They're not stabilized on medication. It also can be because they may be using substances or have other physical ailments that need to be treated. But in general, what is happening is this person may come to us and they don't have any intention or to change what's going on. They may not even identify that it might be helpful to take medication, might be helpful to take care of themselves, might be helpful to find housing. They may be completely unaware or lack the awareness of the problems at all. We'll see it, right? So I'm a clinician, so so back to what I was talking about, which is the ignorance is bliss time. And I don't want to say that it's bliss for the people that are experiencing it. Usually our clients are struggling at this point. I did want to point out that at this period of time, pre-contemplation stage, clients may demonstrate be present under pressure, may demonstrate change under pressure, though you'll see them return to their old behavior. And sometimes when we're working with clients and we see that, we need to understand that it may be the external, extrinsic things that are going on for them. So now they're on an AOT monitoring system and going to court and being monitored by the court monitor and working with behavioral health providers to get their treatment. So we may see someone do that because they are experiencing some pressure from outside themselves. One of the things I want you to think about though, and I will take extrinsic or external pressure to get someone to start doing things. It is helpful. It is very helpful. And then hopefully as a clinical person, I can provide services to help engage that person and help them figure out about what they would like to do about their situation. So it has such a good use to sometimes get people through the door of treatment centers and things like that. But in general, for people to really make lasting change, what we know by the research is they have to begin to internalize and have intrinsic values and beliefs and goals that are all their own, that they've learned and developed from their experience. And that is our job as a clinical team, as a team that's supporting them through the courts, to help them keep on track and figure out what the track even is, identifying goals. And so at this point in time, the interventions that you would be doing with someone who is in pre-contemplation stage would be engagement and building relationships, and it's everyone being on the same page. So anybody who's involved in this person's life, from the courts to court monitors to clinical teams, all working on that relationship building. Because until we get that relationship with that person and help them feel understood and help them identify, what they really do want to work on, we're not going to get very far in helping them with their change process. And so I'll talk about things to avoid at this stage that might be important, and things to avoid at this stage, even though usually we're seeing people do things that are danger to themselves or others, living in ways that might be harmful for them, doing things that might get them more consequences. One of the things at this stage we want to avoid is lecturing, confrontational stance, which is telling people what to do, and also reminding them of their consequences if they don't do certain things, even not doing things for the court. And I'll talk about this a little bit. There's a difference between letting people understand transparently what's expected from services that they're going to get to the court expectations. That is well within our purview to share with our clients, and we should. That doesn't mean that it should be coupled with things like, now remember, if you don't stay sober, you're going to be in trouble and we're going to send you back to inpatient. Some of that may happen on some court teams. Usually my experience is that people are coming back into the hospital when they have struggled to engage and may need inpatient hospitalization. But the thing here is we want to think about over and over again is this idea about relationship. We need to have a relationship with this person before they're going to be willing to tell us mostly anything. And so at this stage, it's a lot of practical assistance, listening, and trying to get the person to understand that we're on the same side. Makes sense to people, I'm hoping. So the next stage is contemplation stage. And I love this graphic because this is what I feel like when I have to think about going on a diet again. That's my lifelong struggle, everybody. And so this is exactly what our clients are going through. So in contemplation stage, you're on the fence. So the people that we're working with may say things like, I know there's a problem and I know I probably need to do something, but there's no action being taken at that point. They're thinking about it is the way I kind of present this to people. And this is sometimes the longest stage of change because there's ambivalence. They know what they want at times, but they're not quite ready to do whatever is needed to kind of move forward with it. And this is the time, there's some behavioral strategies that we're not going to be able to cover here, but this is a great time for the clinical staff and the staff working in the courts, court monitors, to really be familiar with things that are more of a cognitive behavioral kind of interventions, things like motivational interviewing, uh, even DBT skill building here can be helpful to kind of look at behaviors. But the point is to begin to, once we're in the contemplation stage, there is a therapeutic relationship that's been built. So the person's thinking about what kind of issues they have and considering overcoming them. At this stage, the hallmark is helping them make sense of that ambivalence. Ambivalence in its purest form is I feel two ways about things. So sometimes I want to change and sometimes I can't even see the path through. And so one of the things that's important for an entire team, including families and loved ones, to be on the same page with this is it's normal. It's the beginning of thinking about, gosh, what do I need to do? What are my goals? What do I want to do about all these things that, people have said, maybe I need to change. I'm not sure if I want to, but starting to really look at that. And as a team of providers, helping people make sense of that. And so, in clinical terms, what we do is weigh pros and cons of problems and solutions. This also can be done in a court setting, it can be done by family members. It's basically talking about, okay, if you were going to change, what would be the positives and negatives about that? And I always recommend writing stuff down so that you can look at it, like look at it as a family, have it in the court record or have it with the court monitor. What are the things that would be great and not so great about changing? And what are the things that are great about staying the same and not so great? What we're trying to do here is get the person to begin looking at what's not so great about what's going on presently. Maybe there'll be some things that they might want to look at. And then also, what are the things that they might be worried about in this change process? People typically are beings that avoid um things that they're fearful of. That's just a natural response. So when we're talking about changing, things can be very scary at this point for people. And what we want to do is help them kind of work some of that out in their heads. And if you think about any personal change you've ever tried to make, a lot of times we had to think about it for a long time, maybe even talk to trusted people that we know to help us kind of figure it out before we even took a step of action beforehand. And things that help that are really having that relationship and helping people kind of go, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Um, this is also a great time to talk about to really honor if they're still feeling upset or angry about any of the expectations from court, upset and angry about having to take meds, upset and angry about having to go to clinical uh treatment or have case managers involved. It behooves us to support those feelings. And then on the flip side, talk to them about, well, okay, so you don't like any of this, and I get that. And you still have identified some issues that you may want to work on. And that's what we actually call with just rolling with resistance. So, not fighting with people about things, but helping them kind of talk it through. Even if they talk about, gosh, I'm so angry at the court. I don't like this. That's just people being people. Sometimes we're angry about limits that get set for us that we don't want to deal with. That's pretty normal. And so part of our work has to be in honoring that and helping the person work through, okay, but you are here. So what do you make of what are the things that you feel like you want to change? So we're not arguing with them. We're helping them kind of figure out how to get themselves unstuck. And this is the hardest place because sometimes it takes a while for people to engage, be well enough to engage, be willing to talk. And so it could be many years. Some people we see really gravitate towards this and talk about it and want to change quickly, but that's not always the case. And I know there may be expectations from family, from the courts, from clinical staff that this person kind of move more quickly through the process. But I just want to remind people that if you have a client and they've started to kind of think about changing, it may be a bit before they begin to move into a more preparation or planning stage or action stage. So be patient and things that are helpful here are the same things we talked about in a previous stage, which is keep up that relationship, keep up the talking. This is the time to use motivational or behavioral strategies for folks. And this is not the time to begin to tell them what to do and also explain to them how easy it's going to be to change. And sometimes those are the things we do well meaning well-meaning. So as a clinician, I've done this as well. You get excited for the client that's finally kind of identifying, oh my gosh, I might have a problem. And then you want to hop on board with them and be supportive. It comes from a really heartfelt place. But if we're doing stage-based interventions, we want to be really careful when someone starts talking about something that we're not moving too fast past them, that we're really understanding that at this point, it's talk and they need to process a little bit more. Now let's talk about preparation stage. And this is the testing the water stage. I also call this the planning stage when I teach it. Um, this is the time for someone to begin to work with all the partners that are joined together with them to start making plans. What would I do? What would this look like if I changed? They're not necessarily putting those plans into action, but at this point, with the support of everybody that cares for them and the treatment team and the courts, they can kind of get together with a, okay, what would this look like if I did this? And at some point at the later stage of preparation stage, we'll see people taking those steps, maybe trying some new things, trying some things maybe they weren't interested in before. But this is a lot about planning. So what would it look like? What am I going to need? This is also starting the barrier conversation. What are the things that might be in the way, either thinking or practical things that might be in the way for me to do the things I need to do? I think about things like transportation, income. We may have expectations that someone gets to treatment. We need to make sure that we're working with that client to figure out how that's going to work for them and to help them problem solve. And not for us, again, to tell them what to do, but actually for them to be asked, what do you think would work here? What's the best for you? And at this point in time, we can offer options. We can always offer options. The thing is, what I want people to remember is, a client may be making plans and they don't know everything, all the services, all the supports they could have, all the things that they might do. And so our role as a team is to help them make sure they know the options and that we're also talking to them about, okay, here are the things that you can make use of, and this is how you access them. Are you interested? And can we help you with that? Keeping that plan together for them sometimes is helpful because the client may be at a place, and I've experienced this personally, where they haven't been able to picture their life out of a crisis for a very long time. So this is the time for us to help them kind of plan what they'd like their life to look like. And so remember, they may or may not be taking steps, but that doesn't mean they're not moving forward. Um, this is the time to not put our own plan in place, what we think the client should do. And I know this is hard. Part of what is expected for someone on an AOT caseload is that they're med compliant, and also they participate in the services that have been set up or offered for them. And so at times, leading up to preparation stage, clients may not be engaging as much as we would like. At this point, though, when we're at preparation stage, we're seeing more engagement. We're seeing more collaborative discussion. So that's how you know they're in that stage. Now, they're not doing everything by themselves, but they're more willing to kind of be like, okay, I can picture this. I can picture my life differently. And here's what I think I would like to do. And this includes real talks about, medication, real talks about, hey, we've asked you to go and work with this case management group or ACT team. What are you thinking about that? How have you been working with them? We kind of heard that maybe you're avoiding them sometimes. This is the time that you can start talking about, does that need to be in place for you more securely? And do you need to engage with it? Because it seems like you need some supports. So it's not the person doing everything at this point that we would expect. It's much more the planning of that is this stage. And so here it's important to avoid kind of getting ahead of the client and going, okay, well, you need to do this, this, and this. So sometimes when people start the planning process and we're working with folks, we give them a laundry list of things that need to get accomplished. That is going to overwhelm someone who has just started to think about planning. And so we want to be most careful about not putting too much on someone's plate. That doesn't mean discussions can't happen. It just means let's take steps. Let's take steps to make sure that we can get that stuff accomplished. So we may have a bunch of bigger goals, and we're going to take some baby steps in planning towards those goals. Um, and you're going to hear people talking about this. And the other thing I didn't mention that I want to mention here from this slide is you're going to see some reduction in problem behavior. Um, they may be taking their meds more often than not. They may be coming to sessions more often than not. They may be attempting to remain abstinent from substances. The point is they're starting to really look at decision making. What works for me, what doesn't. And so this is a way for us to help them kind of plan those baby steps to get to their goals and what they want to do. The action stage is the one where we people start moving. Seems pretty simple. If you're in action stage, what we're going to see is a modification in behavior and experiences, and the client actually doing things to overcome problems they're experiencing in their environment. So we're not having to remind them as much about appointments. We're not having to worry about that they didn't report to the court or they haven't seen their therapist. Any of the things we're requiring, they're doing that more often than not. They are committing time to access services and comply with expectations. So we're seeing that. And the biggest thing that I talk about on ACT teams when I see someone in action stage, they are proactively calling and saying, hey, I can't make this appointment because I'm actually physically ill. They're taking responsibility for scheduling other appointments or rescheduling. They're not avoiding the team or the providers or the court. We're seeing this visible change in behavior. And in action stage, I want to talk about this. This is the time that we all need to get super supportive and excited for the client and be affirming all the good stuff they're doing. But we also need to keep up interactions with the court, support from family and loved ones, support from any clinical services and the court monitor. Because the natural response when someone starts to change and do stuff, we think they're completely better. That is not the truth. When we're at this stage, action stage, remember, this person's doing all kinds of new stuff to change. So it's going to have fits and starts. And we all have to be there to kind of say, oh, yeah, okay, well, you tried that and it didn't work, but that's okay. Why don't you try this? Because this person is redesigning their life into a life of recovery. And so when we know that a person's in that action stage, we want to also make it clear, you got us, you got all of us. We're here. So if something doesn't work, we're going to help you if you don't have an idea to try something else. And what we're seeing at this stage is we're seeing some action, and it's been going on for about 6 months. So we're seeing this change, and it's kind of steadily moving towards months of taking meds, of engaging. And so at this stage, we want to be super affirming, make sure we're pointing out the things. This is a great time. When I worked with our judges and magistrates, it was a great time to sometimes bring the client in and recognize all the cool stuff they were doing. They may not be off AOT yet, but I've seen clients just burst with pride when they share the new stuff that they're doing and how it's going. And it's just so helpful in the process. I find that so helpful. I've seen it just work real miracles for clients to feel that proud of themselves. But we still want to be there as the safety net, helping them, all of us. And then maintenance, we're going to talk about relapse prevention and maintenance stage. And maintenance stage means that someone has been doing their new behaviors for 6 months or more. We're actually kind of looking at about 12 months. And past 6 months, we're looking at this could be indeterminate, it could be their lifetime. This is what it looks like. But what we're really thinking about is, okay, how do we help support them to consolidate all they've attained, not lose that? And then also, are there things that they would also like to work on to continue their change process? So, it's not an absence of change. It's actually, there might be things that the client wants to work on that they never thought possible once they got to the stage where, they're taking their medication. They may be engaged in treatment and learning about themselves. They're living in stable housing. They may want to go back to school. They may have interpersonal issues that they need to address. There's all host of things. They may want to travel, all kinds of things. They may, want to go back to college, whatever it is, they may have a hobby that they want to pursue. These are the times that we as a team and the people that love them and the courts can say, okay, what are those things? Because that's going to give them a life worth living. Having all this stuff to do, just like the rest of us do, to help fill ourselves up. That it's very problem solving oriented to what they prefer, their preferences, and how they're going to keep this going. Um, and this may be the time we begin to start talking about, transitioning. So if we've had times where this client has been 12 months, 6 to 12 months with they're free of addictive or problem behavior, then it may be a time to be talking about transition to a different level of care. Um, it may not. It depends on really what's going on with court expectations and also what levels of care the clients are participating in. I know if a client's in a more intensive service like ACT, they may remain on the team to work on some of the things I've just talked about because they would still be meeting criteria and need that support for a little bit longer. So it really would be unique to that client and whatever the expectations of the court are for that person to be off commitment. The point is, you're seeing stabilized behavior. And the other thing we're working on is all throughout these stages, we're mindful of avoiding relapse. Um, so relapse or lapse in old behavior can happen at any point in time. But what we're really doing at this stage is solidifying what that plan would be to avoid that. And this includes plans to avoid a mental health relapse. And also, if they're using substances or engaging in other problem behavior, avoiding those lapses as well. And so just make sense. What you're going to be doing is the continued support and affirmations, but also probing a little bit more and using what you know about this client, because by the time they're in maintenance and relapse prevention stage, family and supports, our court monitors, our treatment teams, we should know this person inside and out. Like, we should know their dreams and what they're kind of looking forward to. And so this is a great time to help them really make those plans solid for how they're going to know if things aren't going to well and what they're going to do about that way before they're engaging in things like going completely off their medicine, using substances again, engaging in behaviors of that we would call harmful to them, whatever those are identified, that we worked on the client with. So that's what we're doing in this stage, is just really helping them just, hey, what does my life look like now? What kind of meaning do I want to have in my life so I can avoid those relapses? The other thing that is not on this slide that I want to talk about is also what happens if you do relapse. And so we want people to continue to come to us, to continue to feel that they are not going to be shamed. They are not going to be told that they did something wrong. This kind of stuff happens even in someone, I have friends who have lived experience with mental health and addiction. They could be 20 years sober, taking their meds, and something happens and things go a little haywire for a while. It is natural for us to sometimes skew back to what worked in the past. The idea behind this, though, is to really have that engaged relationship with the client so they know where their safety net. So even if a client transitions off AOT commitment, maybe isn't in the most intensive services, and they got family support, but they're doing things more independently, we always want to keep that door open to be honest about, hey, I'm not doing so well. These are chronic conditions, that our clients have, and we want them to be able to manage them and be able to say, hey, I got to cry uncle, I need some more help. I was doing things independently, but I feel like I'm going down the wrong track. And if I do, who are my supports? Who are my people? And relapse or lapses to old behavior are just food for discussion about, okay, how do we help you kind of get back on track? And also, how do we help you avoid this next time? Because what led up to this? So a lot of that kind of thing is super helpful. I do want to talk about treatment and interventions a little bit as we round out today. So in pre-contemplation stage, this is kind of a review of what I talked about already, but it's so important to understand that if you do things that are in one stage too early, you may push the client away, you may shut them down. And so what we're really trying to do all along is match it to their readiness. So in pre-contemplation stage, relationship, whatever we can help them with that's going to help them feel good, that we understand them, doing a lot of crisis, being present for the crisis stuff without judgment, and just trying to be there for them, and help them feel like they can trust whoever they're working with. Contemplation and preparation stage, what we're doing is helping people look at their goals and what's their awareness of what's going on, uh, beyond uh, just people saying, okay, this is what you need to change, but what's their awareness of the problem? What kind of supports do they have out there? And this is a great time if programs have peer supports or even the courts do. This is a great time to have them linked up with our clients to help kind of explore that a little bit more. And then action stage, this is the actual stage where people benefit the most from counseling. So sometimes we expect people to go into counseling and make a good show of it before they're ready. And so if you're seeing that a client struggling in things like substance abuse counseling or even individual counseling or self-help groups that maybe we've asked them to go to, it's not unusual, because if they're not ready and they're not aware of the concerns and the problem, they're and not ready to do anything about it, they may be very overwhelmed before they get to action stage to be able to skill build. So we're helping with skills, we're coaching, we're encouraging connection with community supports, because that's the time it's going to be most helpful and impactful. Because we have a person who's like, yeah, I know I need to change and I got to take some action. So we want to be careful not to throw things at them, just kind of make referrals out of the blue. But we want to make sure that we understand that that's the best time for them to kind of soak some of that up and develop a real recovery plan for themselves and what they like, what they prefer. And then relapse prevention and maintenance, I've talked about it already. We want to make sure that we're supporting all their life changes and that we're planning with them and we're skill building, and helping them roll with the punches like the rest of us have to learn how to do that haven't had the benefit of coming to an AOT program or an ACT team or even case management, straight case management. We've had to learn these skills too. So we're supporting their life change. And then the last bit I have in the slide deck is for reference for all of you. So if you're ever in a place where you want to talk a little bit about, this is your sheet to remember a little bit about what I said. I feel this is helpful when you're learning about stage of change. It's actually more detailed than this, and I have some staging tools that we have on the website. But I think this is a good starter to think about, okay, where is this client at? What would I be seeing? And what are the things I need to help with if I can, as a loved one or as the courts, when someone I see is struggling and maybe not at the place to be prepared and planning or acting on the expectations that's laid in front of them. And this is a way to actually talk about that and think about it. So I like this slide because it's helpful from that perspective. Um, let's see what time it is. Okay. I know with all our technical issues and that you were patient with me. I know have some time for questions. Before questions, I did just want to point out on the slide deck, which I'll be forwarding so that you have it, is our website, the Center for Evidence-Based Practice at case.edu. I really encourage you to visit. We have a ton of materials that are free. We have materials about motivational interviewing, about ACT, about a number of things, co-occurring disorder and treatment, best practices, and it's free. We share everything. So um, you you don't have to come on and pay us anything. And there's tons of articles if people are interested in some of the things I've talked about. Feel free to go and check it out. It's very easy to negotiate. And we have a lot of stuff for you to look at, and including there's a staging tool on there. Um, so informal staging, I talked about it today just to educate you at first. There is a formal staging process that we have tools for that help people kind of implement that in their agencies or within their organization. And so if you're interested in that, please feel free. You can contact us actually through the website. We're happy to talk to you and do some consulting and training if you would like to do that. I know I have a broad range of folks on this call. So just want to make sure you know that you can visit. You don't have to be a clinician either. This is for family, friends, anything that you would like to learn about, we have there that would have to do with the things I've talked about today. So feel free to visit and, ask questions. If you have a question, we do have, we respond to email questions, and we'll even get back to you. We'll be assigned to get back to you. If it's someone who's come from this call, please identify yourself as such, and I'll be the one that will probably answer the call just to keep up the continuity if you have any questions. Um, that's that's where I'm at. I know we went quickly through that today. I hope it's helpful. And I think we might have some questions in the chat if people would like me to answer. I don't know.
We
Yes.
do. And I will start with, let's see. And thank you so much, Melissa. This is a lot of really helpful information. We appreciate you making yourself so available to the audience.
Oh, no problem. I love
Um,
this, by the way. I love this. I love doing this.
so one question is, well, someone writes that a lot of their clients are psychotic and
Mm,
they're asking if you have any advice on how to engage with them knowing that they're not taking meds.
yeah. Um, so this is just, I don't know. I think what's helpful, honestly, is to be really open to trauma-informed care, making sure people have, when we're meeting with them, that we might provide them with a cold or hot beverage. We might put them in a place that feels comforting for them. Um, I actually, as a clinician, that has worked with clients that are very psychotic, I try to figure out what they like to eat, maybe a snack or things like that to just help them feel supported. And I try not to do as much talking and more just being with them, and seeing if they can tolerate that, and actually asking them what they might need from me in that moment. A very gentle trauma informed approach. Because some people with psychosis, they don't even want to meet with us but for a minute. And so when I did the majority of my work with people with psychosis in the community, we were on an ACT team. And so just coming back to be non-judgmental, trying to find them in the community if we can't, and then being of assistance. Um, do they need a new phone? Are they struggling to get their birth certificate? What are the practical things I can do to help them feel like I'm on their side? Do I need to help them go to the food bank? And sometimes that's not going to all come out, and I might need to offer those things. So really offering, um, do you like to go grocery shopping? Would you like a ride? Do you have income right now? Could I help you with that? And just be patient with the response. Normally it's phones, to be honest with you, get me a phone. I have not met someone who's super psychotic that doesn't need a phone or want some practical things. Here and there, uh, I have, but usually once we develop a relationship, that changes. So I don't know if that helps. I'm hoping that helps, that question, like my answer, but super amount of patience and good snacks. I'm not talking about healthy snacks, by the way. I'm talking about like honey buns. I'm talking about things that they would like, as long as they're not diabetic and we have to worry about that. If they want full force pop, we're gonna make that happen to get them some pop. At those beginning stages, I just want to know what they like. And so if they like that stuff and it's not healthy, we're not going to push it down their throats, but really to use it as an engagement tool and help them feel closer to us, it's helpful, honestly. It sometimes will help them sit with us a little bit longer. Uh, but then
Yeah,
as we get to know them, other things, we'll do other things. Go ahead.
that makes sense. And this is kind of like the question you just answered, but a little more specific. So Janet is asking how you get to step one with people who are high functioning but have paranoid delusions and anosognosia and refuse meds. She says treatment usually involves a long period of time on antipsychotics coupled with psychosis-based CBT, but if not on meds for those with paranoid delusions, isn't psychiatric deterioration exacerbating the delusions?
So when I was listening to you ask this question of me, I was thinking about how often that I just take a moment and do some mindfulness and a little bit of prayer about our clients who are struggling with the anosognosia. Um, I do think and have seen the AOT process, the extrinsic motivator, helps sometimes with this, even if the client doesn't understand that they have an issue. I have seen it actually work really well. Um, but in general, it could take a very long time and it may never be at the point the person is wanting to take medication. Um, to the extent that it would help them be able to interact in a way to move through these stages um, of change. And it would really depend as they start taking medication, if their cognitive functioning is at a place that they may not be able to conceptualize and participate in their own care, you'd have to consider that. What I will say is there's still things that are important to people, even when they have a psychotic disorder and the anosognosia. And that's what we need to lean into to develop the relationship. Um, and it may be that they never want to be on medication, no matter what we say to them, or they may never want to discuss that they have a diagnosis of schizophrenia and part of the symptom presentation is anosognosia. Um, and so we have to lean into that piece of it to really truly understand what their life is like and what they will and won't do, and what our role is. Uh, there have been some tough cases, I will be very honest with you. They were on AOT and they did not move through the stages, and they were still at the place where they were more in crisis mode, back and forth with commitments to the hospital. Those are tough cases. I really think on an ACT team, one of the things we did is we also tried to figure out who their favorite people were on the team to do those folks as the interveners at times, so that they knew and they felt safe with them. But this is a long haul type of practice for people at the more severe end of the spectrum. But I've seen people change that are in that place that you're describing, just with maybe a relationship with one of my staff, and then we can make that expand to acceptance of for services and everything like that. But there is a piece of the population that we're talking about today that will qualify for ACTs, that may struggle a little bit more and not benefit from services in the way we offer them. That doesn't mean we won't continue to try. I hope that's helpful. I don't want to sound not hopeful about things. It just takes a lot more time and effort with folks like this, like years. honestly. When I think about true change for some of the clients that you're asking me about, probably 4 years. I can think of a client that meets what you were describing very clearly. Um, and it took quite a while for us to figure out and engage and figure out what motivated him. And then when we did, he was more willing to consider medication. So it took a while of intervening and kind of being present. I hope that helps.
That definitely helps, and I think is applicable to what one of our audience members shared with us, which is she's a mother of an adult son with mental illness, and he is getting intensive inpatient treatment for the first time since his diagnosis 14 years ago.
Okay.
But he still doesn't think he needs meds once he's out of the hospital. And she's
So,
asking, is there any hope for him to change his mindset? And that
yes.
he'll take meds to please her, but that he hasn't accepted the need for them on his own.
Mental illness and psychotic disorders or bipolar disorder, they're just so wildly. They have as their symptom base this lack of insight. And yes, there is always hope. I am so excited that he's getting some intensive treatment. Um, there always is that chance that he will get on a good med and it'll really work for him to change that thinking. What I'd also recommend, though, strongly is that he step down to some type of intensive, maybe case management, so that they're there and more present for him if possible. I know that's not always possible depending on where you're at or what services are offered because they can actually take a little bit of the burden off of you. And start supporting him in a different way to explore that. Sometimes family is not credible to a person who is struggling. They're like, oh, you're my mom. I don't have to listen to you and you don't know what you're talking about. But sometimes we can weather some of that. The clinical team can weather some of that and help them figure out what's going on because it's just so anxiety producing to love someone with a mental illness and you see them struggling. So um, I wish you luck. And yes, there's always hope. There's always hope. I just have a question for that person who asked. How old is her loved one? How old is her son?
Thanks, Melissa. We'll give her a chance to get back to us
Okay.
on that. Um, so I have a message here or a question here from Jerry who says, from a family member perspective, it seems quite common for treatment teams to quote, fire clients when they are in pre-contemplation
Mm-hmm.
stages.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
My thoughts are the system is sometimes not designed for our family members to not be ready for treatment. And so they will exhibit behaviors in programs that are what we call action based. So, say I have a loved one, and I'm sure this is why you're asking, that might have a co occurring disorder and they need both inpatient for mental health and they might have some addiction things going on, and the person's not ready to make those changes. Our system is actually set up in a lot of ways for people to go in those types of treatment to be super ready. And what I normally recommend is more intensive case management or ACT services if you have them in the area, because there is a no dropout policy for ACT services. The idea behind things like ACT is that you can be who you are and we're still going to keep coming. But you are exactly right. Depending on where you're living and the situation and access to services, there will be programs that are not suited to your loved one, that they will not blossom because the expectation is beyond where they're ready. And so for some of those folks, if you don't have access to an intensive or an ACT team, you could also think about some individual case management or individual services. But I know then if the client, if your loved one doesn't show up a certain amount of time, sometimes the person's closed as well. That's why I'm talking a little bit about ACT. And definitely AOT can help with some of that as well. I will take any way someone comes to treatment. So if there's an ability to do AOT, uh, types of things, that would be great for the person because it gets someone else helping you out with this issue. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, so Jerry has followed up in the chat and said that unfortunately, it sounds like ACT is specifically the program that she hears is firing clients who don't follow the expectations.
That's not a good ACT team, just saying. So can we give Jerry a chance to answer this? Does he mind sharing where he's from?
I actually know the answer to that.
Okay.
Jerry is a woman and she's from Washington.
Okay, sorry about that, Jerry. Washington State?
Yes.
Okay. So we travel all around the country to help different ACT teams. I'm not really familiar with what's available in Washington State for ACT. But I'd be happy to pass that on to the folks that have sponsored this. And just in consulting and training, there would be a no rejection policy for people in ACT if you're typically practicing at high fidelity. So I would be happy to make sure you knew the resources out there if there was some other option for you, because that is actually not high fidelity ACT the way we would hope it would be practiced.
Right. Thank you, Melissa. We have a question from Monica who's asking if you've seen differences in the stages of change after the action stage between clients with psychosis that are taking the long-acting injectable versus those who are taking daily medication.
Okay, I'm going to be fully transparent. I love long-acting injectables. I've seen it work miracles for clients that really struggle with taking their meds, where they still, because a client could be in action stage and taking their meds more often than not, but that even missing them here and there, that's better than what was happening before. But the long-acting injectable can help just give them that steady state of thinking, symptom reduction, hopefully. And then hopefully when they're on long-acting injectables, if they have some breakthrough symptoms, those can be medicated with not as many pills if that was the struggle for them. I've seen people get well both ways. I just happen to really feel like the population of folks that we're talking about, you know, I forget to take my meds. I can't imagine having a psychotic disorder and possibly an addiction or physical health problems and having to keep track of all that, even if I was in the action stage. So I think whatever we can do to help get enough meds in folks is important to help with their symptoms, as long as they're willing to participate in that. I think you have better long acting kind of symptom reduction, and you have someone you can work with for long periods of time and talk with and kind of do the work we were talking about. Sometimes that can be difficult, that is insight oriented. You can do CBT for psychosis. You can do those types of things. They can do DBT, those types of things.
Makes sense. And by the way, the mother who specifically asked about her son, he's 33 now, and he was 18 when he was diagnosed, and she had to hop off. But she says thank you for all the resources. She has a lot of new stuff to look into, and is looking forward to checking that out.
I'm so excited for her. Anybody who's a family member on here, just know you're not alone, and there's plenty of us good people out there trying to help. So just keep at it. You'll find us. And if I can help you find people in my travels that we go around the country, I will be happy to provide those resources so you know who would be helpful, and kind of embrace your loved one for just who they are right in the moment with no changes is what's important here.
Thank you, Melissa. You're awesome. And I know that especially when things get stressful and tiring, it's good to remember that. So
And whatever you're doing is wonderful. Just being there, trying to love your family member and trying to do the best for them is just wonderful. They're going to need that forever. And I just hope that all of you get some treatment so people can share the burden with you. And I mean, it's a burden. It's hard. It's hard to love people that are struggling and kind of be their lockstep with them. So, I hope that you find what you need in providers.
so I believe this is our last question, but I'll do one
Okay.
more call for those of us who are to the audience. If you have more questions, this is your chance. But the question from Christian is, what would you say is a reasonable rate of success that a program should aim for?
Are we talking about a program that has AOT involved, that people are graduating from? I guess I need a little bit more information.
Right, I'm not Christian, if you're still here and you want to give us some more specifics, please go ahead.
I can talk about it while Christian may be answering or not. I think it depends on what type of program you're talking about. If we're talking about strictly AOT, and people graduating from that program, I cannot honestly remember the research and the numbers that I had when we were doing the AOT portion of our treatment with clients. So I don't know if there's a number to shoot from. So here's what I want to say about it. If you're providing more intensive services to clients that are on AOT, what I think you need to look at and focus on is, what are the outcomes that we'd like to see for clients that would mean they are moving towards recovery? So not just this idea of graduation even from AOT, but it could be things like, are they achieving their goals of stable housing? Are they taking their medication more often than not? Have they, if they wanted to, gotten a job, or are volunteering or have returned to school? What are the outcomes that are meaningful for people that we know help you live a life worth living? And so looking at that as a clinical team and beginning to kind of track what might be important. Things I can also think about is no criminal offenses. We want to see that for our clients. And we can also look at percentage of participation with the court. How are they doing with that? And so it's a broader discussion. I think it's a good thing to be thinking about, because we want to think about, okay, what are the outcomes that we're seeing with us? And what kind of percentages of people are, staying well? And that all can be tracked with. And also, I didn't mention hospitalizations. We'd like to see over time decrease in hospitalizations as well. So that to me is easily tracked, and then you develop your baseline of what you're seeing from the data. What is it skewing towards? What are the areas that you need to focus on to help people if you're finding you're lacking in some area? Because that is going to speak to what really needs to happen for people to be successful and transition, say, off AOT, but also transition to lower levels of care if you're doing a more intensive work with folks. So it's multifactorial. Um, and you can see some of the tools and things we have there, and some of the criteria, say for ACT or integrated dual disorder treatment. There's some things there, supports for you to look at.
Thanks, Melissa. That was great. And Christian doesn't have more specifics, so that was
Okay.
a perfect answer for that. That was our last question. And I just want to remind everyone that we will be sending you Melissa's slides that she was kind enough to share, as well as the recording of this webinar. And you should get that to your emails early next week. and it will also be posted on our YouTube channel if you want to share it further with those who didn't attend. But other than that, thank you so much, Melissa. This was really helpful. We got some good questions. Thank you to the audience for your engagement there. And we really appreciate your time on this. And we know that this recording will be impactful beyond just the presentation today, which was great.
But I'm glad it was helpful for folks.
All right. Well, everyone have a lovely rest of the day and take care.